Big Shaq adjusted his oversized hoodie as he stepped off the crew van, grinning at the camera following his every move. All right, people, no fancy cars, no big houses, just me, regular Shaq, out here to live the normal life. He waved dramatically at the quiet suburban street, where rows of modest homes lined the sidewalk. The hum of distant lawnmowers and barking dogs filled the air. Let's get this show started, he declared, his booming voice bouncing off the houses. A cameraman chuckled, already predicting the antics to come. Shaq tugged his duffel bag over his shoulder, stuffed with what he'd confidently called the essentials. In truth, it held a peculiar mix of high-end snacks, silk pajamas, and a portable basketball hoop he insisted he'd find a use for. He strolled along the sidewalk, scanning the neighborhood with exaggerated curiosity. Then, a beat-up sedan caught his eye. The car was parked under a shady tree, its windows slightly cracked. Inside, he spotted a woman hunched over the steering wheel, her face hidden behind messy brown hair. In the back seat, a baby fussed quietly, tiny hands flailing in the air. Shaq's steps slowed. "Oh snap, look at this!" he whispered loudly, gesturing for the camera to follow. "We got a cool setup over here. Like a mobile home situation, huh? People are really out here innovating." Approaching the car, he tapped on the window, his massive hand nearly covering the glass. The woman jolted, startled, her tired eyes darting to him. She hesitated before rolling down the window an inch. Can I help you?" she asked, her voice wary. "Yo, I'm Shaq. You're on my show, regular guy Shaq. What's your name?" "Claire," she replied, her brows knitting together in confusion. Shaq glanced at the baby, who had paused mid-cry to stare wide-eyed at the towering man. "And who's this little boss?" "That's Mia," Claire said hesitantly, sitting up straighter. Shaq clapped his hands together, startling both of them. "Perfect. Y'all gotta join me. I'm living like a regular guy for a week. Seems like you already got the setup. Mobile home, right?" "Genius." Claire blinked, processing his words. "Mobile home? No, this is just my car. Even better. More compact. Look, I got snacks, a sleeping bag, and wait for it, a basketball hoop. We can team up." "I don't think," Claire started, but Shaq was already walking back to the sidewalk, motioning dramatically for her to follow. Claire sighed and exchanged a look with Mia, who had resumed fussing. After a moment's hesitation, she stepped out of the car, holding her baby close. By the time she caught up to Shaq, he was rummaging through his bag, pulling out items with childlike excitement. "Check it out. Gourmet granola bars, a solar phone charger, and boom, Shaq-branded water bottles. Hydration is key, Claire." Claire stared, unsure whether to laugh or cry. "Thanks, but we're fine." "Really?" Shaq paused, finally catching the strain in her voice. He softened, though his tone remained playful. "Come on, Claire. I got a whole crew with me. Safety in numbers, right? And you'll be the first ever guest star of Regular Guy Shaq." Despite herself, Claire smiled faintly. There was something disarming about his energy, even if it was overwhelming. "All right. But just for today." "That's the spirit!" Shaq exclaimed, tossing his duffel bag over his shoulder again. "Let's roll!" As they walked down the street, Shaq peppered Claire with questions, his curiosity genuine if not always tactful. "So, how long you been living the car life? Is it like a minimalist thing? I saw this documentary on van life once." Claire hesitated before answering. "It's not really by choice. Things just got hard, and this is where we ended up." Shaq nodded solemnly, though he clearly didn't fully grasp the weight of her words. "Well, you're in luck now. Shaq's here. We're gonna make this week legendary." Mia let out a sudden wail, breaking the moment. Shaq froze, unsure what to do. Claire instinctively bounced her, murmuring soothing words. Does she need, like, a timeout or something?" Shaq asked awkwardly. Claire stifled a laugh. "No, she's probably hungry." "Oh. Say no more." Shaq dug through his bag, producing a granola bar triumphantly. Here you go, little boss. Claire bit her lip to keep from laughing as she shook her head. She's a baby, Shaq. She needs formula. Oh. He scratched his head, embarrassed but determined. Okay, cool. Formula. Got it. First mission of the day, find baby formula. Let's go! Despite the absurdity of the situation, Claire felt a flicker of relief. For the first time in weeks, someone was paying attention, not out of pity but with genuine, albeit clumsy care. Maybe, she thought, this bizarre adventure might lead to something good after all. Shaq's energy was relentless as they reached a nearby corner store. He held the door open for Claire and Mia, his towering presence nearly blocking out the sunlight. The cashier's eyes widened as Shaq ducked under the doorway, his head brushing the ceiling. Claire followed timidly, clutching Mia close, her steps cautious in contrast to Shaq's booming confidence. All right, baby formula aisle, where you at? Shaq announced, scanning the store like it was a basketball court. The clerk pointed mutely toward the back, too starstruck to speak. Claire hesitated, her voice low. Shaq, I can't really afford. Say no more. This is on me, he interrupted, waving a massive hand. Consider it a sponsorship from Team Shaq. Now let's stock up. At the formula section, Shaq picked up a canister, squinting at the label. Man, these ingredients sound like a science experiment. Is this normal? Claire shrugged, the tension in her shoulders easing a fraction. It's what she needs. That's all that matters. Fair point, Shaq said, tossing 3 canisters into his arms as if they weighed nothing. Let's grab diapers too. What size? Claire hesitated, glancing down at Mia. Size 2. Shaq nodded decisively. Size 2 it is. Diaper aisle, let's go. The cashier rang them up, still wide-eyed. Shaq paid without a second thought, tossing in a couple of stuffed toys for good measure. As they stepped back outside, the contrast between Shaq's carefree demeanor and Claire's cautious gratitude was stark. She shifted uncomfortably, unused to someone stepping in so easily. Thanks, she said finally, her voice quiet. This means a lot. No thanks needed, Shaq replied, his tone softening. But hey, you're not off the hook. This is a team effort now. You gotta tell me what's next on the list. Claire blinked at him, unsure how to respond. Next on the list? Yeah, like what do you and Mia need most? Food? Gas? A foot massage? Hit me with it. She laughed despite herself, the sound light but genuine. Food would be good. I usually try to find places where we can get something for cheap. Shaq frowned, his expression serious for the first time. Cheap doesn't cut it. Not for you too. Let's go find something decent. Claire started to protest, but Shaq waved her off, his energy back in full force. He led the way to a nearby diner, where he ordered an impressive spread, pancakes, eggs, bacon, and a side of fruit for Mia. The waitress looked amused as she jotted it all down. As they ate, Shaq's larger-than-life personality filled the room. He told stories about his basketball career, complete with exaggerated reenactments that had Mia giggling in her high chair. Claire listened quietly, her guarded demeanor slowly giving way to curiosity. She hadn't laughed this much in years. Halfway through the meal, Shaq leaned back, his tone turning thoughtful. So, Claire, what's the game plan? You got family? Friends who can help out? Her smile faded, and she focused on cutting up a piece of pancake. Not really. It's just me and Mia. I've been trying to save up for a place, but it's been tough. Shaq nodded slowly, his gaze steady. That's real. But you're holding it down. Respect. Claire glanced up, surprised by the sincerity in his voice. Thanks. It doesn't always feel that way. Well, let me tell you something, Shaq said, leaning forward. You're out here making it work, even when the odds are stacked against you. That takes guts. Don't sell yourself short. The words hung in the air, heavier than his usual banter. Claire looked at him, her eyes searching his face for any trace of pity. Instead, she found understanding, a rare kind of empathy that felt genuine. Mia interrupted the moment with a loud squeal, smacking her hands against the high chair tray. Shaq grinned, picking up a piece of fruit and holding it out. "All right, little boss, back to work. Eat up." Claire laughed, shaking her head. "She likes you. That's a good sign." "Of course she does," Shaq said, puffing out his chest. "Kids love me. It's a fact." The rest of the meal passed easily, the weight of their conversation balanced by Shaq's endless humor. As they left the diner, Claire felt a strange mix of emotions: gratitude, hope, and the faintest hint of something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in a long time: relief. Shaq stretched as they stepped onto the sidewalk, his energy undiminished. "All right, Claire. Food check. Baby formula check. What's next?" Claire hesitated, the question catching her off guard. "I don't know." Shaq clapped a hand on her shoulder, his grin as wide as ever. "Then we figure it out together. That's what teams do, right?" For the first time, Claire felt like maybe, just maybe, she wasn't in this alone. Shaq's determination to help Claire and Mia only grew stronger as the day went on. His mind was already racing with ideas, each one bigger and more ambitious than the last. He wasn't just thinking about temporary fixes. He wanted solutions that would truly change their situation. For Shaq, that meant doing what he did best, making things happen on a larger-than-life scale. "So, Claire," he started, walking alongside her as she cradled Mia in her arms. "What's your dream? Like, if you could have anything, no limits, what would it be?" Claire looked at him, caught off guard by the question. "My dream? I don't really think about that anymore. Right now, it's just about making sure Mia is okay." Shaq frowned, his usual smile fading. "That's survival, not a dream. Come on, there's gotta be something." She hesitated, the weight of the question evident. "I used to want to open a bakery. I love baking. It's the one thing that's always made me happy." Shaq's face lit up. "A bakery? Now we're talking. All right, we gotta make that happen." Claire shook her head quickly, her expression serious. "Shaq, I can't even afford an apartment right now. A bakery isn't realistic." Hey, he said, holding up a hand. "Don't shut it down before we even start. Dreams don't have to be realistic at first. You just need a plan and some hustle." She gave him a skeptical look, but there was a flicker of something else in her eyes: hope, maybe, or at least curiosity. "A plan and hustle, huh? You make it sound easy." "Not easy," Shaq admitted, "but possible. Look, I didn't get to where I am by thinking small. You gotta think big, Claire. Bigger than your problems." As they walked, Shaq's mind continued to churn. He knew Claire needed immediate help, but he also wanted to give her something lasting, something she could build on. He pulled out his phone, scrolling through his contacts. When he found the number he was looking for, he stopped and grinned. "All right, I've got an idea," he said. "Trust me on this." Claire raised an eyebrow, her wariness returning. "What kind of idea?" "You'll see," he said, dialing the number. After a few rings, someone picked up. "Yo, Tony! It's Shaq." Yeah, I'm good. Listen, I need a favor." As he spoke to Tony, apparently a friend who owned a chain of restaurants, Claire listened quietly, unsure of what to make of the conversation. Shaq talked fast, his enthusiasm infectious, though she couldn't quite piece together what he was planning. When he hung up, Shaq turned to her with a triumphant grin. "Okay, step 1 is set. Tony's got a spot downtown where you can test out your baking. We'll start small, see what happens." Claire blinked, stunned. "Wait, what? I didn't agree to." "Relax," Shaq said, his tone gentle but firm. "You're not committing to anything. It's just a chance to see what you can do. No pressure." Her instinct was to push back, to insist that it wasn't possible, but something in Shaq's expression stopped her. He wasn't just being generous, he genuinely believed in her, even though they'd only just met. It was a strange feeling, to have someone else's confidence fill the space where her doubts usually lived. I don't even have ingredients, she said finally, her voice quiet. We'll get them, Shaq replied without hesitation. And anything else you need. You focus on the baking, I'll handle the rest. Claire sighed, a mixture of exhaustion and reluctant acceptance. You're not going to let this go, are you? Nope, Shaq said, grinning. Teamwork makes the dream work. As they headed toward Tony's restaurant, Shaq kept up a steady stream of chatter, trying to keep the mood light. He told Claire more stories about his time in the NBA, about the lessons he'd learned from failure, and the importance of resilience. Claire listened, her guards slowly coming down as she realized that beneath all the bravado, Shaq was someone who truly cared. By the time they reached the restaurant, Claire felt a strange mix of nerves and excitement. Tony greeted them warmly, clearly used to Shaq's larger-than-life antics, and showed them to the small kitchen space he'd set aside for Claire to use. It wasn't much, but it was clean and well-equipped, a far cry from anything Claire had expected. This is a lot, she said, looking around. Take your time, Tony said with a smile. Shaq speaks highly of you. Claire glanced at Shaq, who gave her an encouraging nod. Let's see what you've got, Claire. No pressure. Despite her initial hesitation, Claire found herself drawn to the kitchen. It had been years since she'd baked anything, but the muscle memory came back quickly. As she worked, Shaq stayed nearby, cracking jokes and keeping Mia entertained. For the first time in a long time, Claire felt a spark of something she'd thought she'd lost: passion. When she pulled the first tray of pastries out of the oven, Shaq leaned in, inhaling deeply. Oh, yeah? That's the good stuff. Tony, you better clear some space on the menu, 'cause these are about to blow up. Claire laughed, the sound light and unguarded. You haven't even tasted them yet. Don't need to, Shaq said confidently. I can smell greatness. As Claire watched him take the first bite, her heart raced. His face lit up, and he gave an exaggerated nod of approval. Yup. Told you. Greatness. For the first time in months, Claire allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, things could get better. The success of Claire's pastries at Tony's restaurant was almost instantaneous. Word spread quickly through the neighborhood about the mystery baker behind the counter. Customers were coming in specifically to try the flaky croissants and perfectly sweetened tarts. Tony couldn't stop raving about the positive feedback, and Shaq, always a natural promoter, was already brainstorming bigger plans. All right, Claire, Shaq said, sitting across from her in the kitchen while she cleaned up. You're killing it here, but this is just step 2. We gotta think about what's next. Claire looked up, wiping her hands on a towel. What's next? I'm just trying to get through today. Nah, Shaq replied, shaking his head. You're thinking too small again. Look at what you've done in just a few days. You've got people lining up out there. Imagine what you could do with your own place. My own place? Claire repeated, the words sounding impossible. Shaq, I don't have money for rent, let alone starting a business. Money's not the problem, Shaq said confidently. The problem is believing you can do it. That's where you've got to start. Claire hesitated, unsure how to respond. She had spent so much time focusing on survival that the idea of building something for herself felt almost indulgent. But Shaq's enthusiasm was hard to ignore, and the steady stream of customers outside was undeniable proof that her skills were valuable. As they spoke, Tony came in, holding his phone with a wide grin on his face. You two need to see this, he said, placing the phone on the counter and hitting play. The video was a local news segment featuring Tony's restaurant, and more specifically, Claire's pastries. The reporter gushed about the baked goods that were bringing the community together, and there were interviews with customers who couldn't stop raving about the taste. One woman even called them life-changing. Claire stared at the screen, speechless. Life-changing? She muttered under her breath. Shaq clapped his hands together. See? I told you. Greatness, Tony chimed in. This is just the beginning, Claire. People are asking about you. They want to know who's behind the magic. Claire felt a wave of emotion rise in her chest. Pride, fear, excitement. It was all mixed together, making it hard to process. She had never imagined that something as simple as baking could lead to this. Okay, she said finally, taking a deep breath. What's step 3? Shaq grinned, already prepared. Step 3 is taking this to the next level. We get you out of this kitchen and into your own space. But first, we need to make sure you're ready. Ready? Claire asked, raising an eyebrow. Yeah, Shaq replied. Running a business isn't just about making great food. You've got to know how to manage everything: money, supplies, marketing. It's a lot. Tony nodded in agreement. Shaq's right. You've got the talent, but the business side is just as important. Claire frowned, the weight of their words sinking in. I don't know anything about running a business. That's where mentorship comes in, Shaq said. I know a guy who's been through it all. He started with nothing and built a chain of successful restaurants. I'll set up a meeting. The idea of mentorship felt intimidating, but Claire knew Shaq wouldn't steer her wrong. If she was going to take this leap, she needed all the help she could get. True to his word, Shaq arranged for Claire to meet with his friend Marcus, a self-made entrepreneur who had risen from humble beginnings to become a respected figure in the food industry. Marcus was kind but direct, offering practical advice on everything from sourcing ingredients to creating a business plan. What you're doing is amazing, Marcus said, leaning forward in his chair as they spoke. But passion alone won't sustain a business. You need structure. A plan. Claire listened intently, taking notes as Marcus outlined key steps for turning her passion into a viable enterprise. It was overwhelming, but also empowering. For the first time, she felt like she had a roadmap, something to guide her toward a future she hadn't dared to imagine. Meanwhile, Shaq continued to work behind the scenes, using his connections to drum up support for Claire's venture. He reached out to sponsors, pitched her story to media outlets, and even set up a crowdfunding campaign to help cover the initial costs of opening her own bakery. The campaign quickly gained traction, thanks in no small part to Shaq's celebrity status. Donations poured in, accompanied by messages of encouragement from people who had been moved by Claire's story. Within days, they had surpassed their goal, leaving Claire in awe of the support she was receiving. I don't know how to thank you, she told Shaq one evening as they reviewed the campaign results. I don't deserve all this. Stop that, Shaq said firmly. You do deserve it. You've worked hard, and people see that. This isn't just about the money, it's about believing in yourself. Claire nodded, wiping away a tear. For so long, she had felt invisible, her struggles unnoticed by the world around her. Now, for the first time, she felt seen, valued. With the funds secured and a plan in place, the next step was finding a location for the bakery. Shaq insisted on helping, accompanying Claire as they toured potential spaces. Each time, he encouraged her to dream big, to envision what her bakery could be. This isn't just a business, he said during one visit. It's your legacy. Something Mia can look back on and be proud of. The thought of leaving a legacy for her daughter brought tears to Claire's eyes. She had spent so much time worrying about providing for Mia in the present that she hadn't considered what kind of future she could create for her. By the end of the week, they found the perfect spot, a small but charming storefront in the heart of the community that had embraced Claire's baking. As she signed the lease, surrounded by Shaq, Tony, and Marcus, Claire felt a sense of accomplishment that she had never experienced before. This is it, Shaq said, clapping her on the back. Step 3 complete. Claire laughed, her heart full. What's step 4? Shaq grinned. Opening day, of course. And trust me, it's gonna be epic. The bakery's opening day was nothing short of a spectacle. A line formed outside before the doors even opened, filled with eager customers who had followed Claire's journey through social media and Shaq's promotional efforts. The small storefront was transformed into a vibrant space, the aroma of fresh pastries wafting through the air, drawing in passers-by. Inside, Claire moved with purpose, greeting customers, taking orders, and overseeing her small team. It felt surreal to see her dream brought to life, and the overwhelming support from the community made the moment even more special. Mia, dressed in a tiny apron Shaq had gifted her, handed out samples to delighted patrons, her giggles adding to the lively atmosphere. Shaq stood in the background, arms crossed with a satisfied smile. He had insisted on being there, not just to witness the culmination of their efforts but to ensure everything went smoothly. Tony, who had taken the day off from his restaurant, was also present, lending a hand and beaming with pride. As the day progressed, it became clear that the bakery wasn't just a business, it was a hub for connection. Customers stayed to chat, sharing their own stories and expressing how Claire's journey had inspired them. One woman tearfully explained how seeing Claire's success had encouraged her to pursue her passion for art, while a father mentioned bringing his daughter to the bakery to show her that hard work and resilience could lead to great things. Amid the bustling crowd, an older man approached Claire with a kind smile. He introduced himself as a retired pastry chef who had owned a bakery in the neighborhood decades ago. "I know the work it takes to do what you've done," he said, his voice filled with admiration. "If you ever need advice or just someone to talk to, I'd be happy to help." Claire thanked him, touched by the gesture. It was yet another reminder of how far she had come and the support she now had in her corner. For years, she had felt isolated and unseen, but today proved that she was anything but alone. Meanwhile, Shaq was busy orchestrating a surprise for Claire. Earlier in the week, he had reached out to a renowned food critic who happened to be in town. The critic had agreed to stop by during the opening, curious about the buzz surrounding Claire's bakery. When the critic arrived, Shaq discreetly guided him to a table and introduced himself to Claire, whose face flushed with nervous excitement. The critic ordered an assortment of pastries, taking careful notes as he sampled each one. The tension in the room was palpable, with even the customers picking up on the significance of his presence. After what felt like an eternity, the critic stood and addressed Claire directly. "These are some of the best pastries I've ever had," he declared, his voice carrying across the room. "Your work is exceptional, and I look forward to seeing your bakery become a staple in this city." The room erupted into applause, and Claire felt tears spring to her eyes. Shaq, standing off to the side, gave her a thumbs up, his grin wider than ever. The moment was a validation of everything she had worked for, a testament to the sacrifices and challenges she had overcome. As the day wound down and the last customers trickled out, Claire finally had a moment to breathe. She sat at one of the tables, a cup of tea in her hands, and surveyed the now empty bakery. The shelves were nearly bare, a testament to the day's success. Mia, exhausted from the excitement, had fallen asleep in a chair next to her. Shaq joined her, pulling up a chair and placing a hand on her shoulder. "So," he said, "how does it feel to be the owner of the hottest bakery in town?" Claire laughed, shaking her head in disbelief. "It feels amazing. I still can't believe this is real." "It's real," Shaq replied. "And it's just the beginning. Today was about more than pastries. You've built something that brings people together. That's special." Claire nodded, her gaze drifting to Mia. "I just want to give her a good life. Something stable. Something she can be proud of." "You're already doing that," Shaq said. "But don't forget to be proud of yourself, too. You've come a long way." Claire smiled, the weight of his words sinking in. For the first time in years, she felt a sense of peace, a confidence that she was on the right path. The bakery was more than a business. It was a symbol of resilience, a testament to the power of community, and the importance of believing in oneself. As they sat together, reflecting on the day, Claire couldn't help but think about the people who had supported her along the way: Tony, Marcus, the retired pastry chef, the customers who had shared their stories, and of course, Shaq. Each of them had played a role in helping her get to this point, and she was determined to pay it forward. "I've been thinking," Claire said, breaking the silence. "I want to find a way to give back. Maybe start a program to help others like me. People who just need a little support to get back on their feet." Shaq's face lit up. "Now that's what I'm talking about. Legacy. Let's make it happen." Claire chuckled. "One step at a time, Shaq." He nodded, leaning back in his chair. One step at a time. But I've got a feeling your steps are about to get a lot bigger. As the weeks passed, Claire's bakery became a cornerstone of the community, drawing people from all walks of life. The buzz surrounding the shop hadn't just brought in steady business, it had also ignited conversations about resilience, generosity, and what it meant to truly support one another. Word of Claire's story continued to spread, and soon her bakery was not only a local hotspot but a symbol of transformation and hope. One afternoon, a young woman entered the bakery, clutching a resume and looking visibly nervous. Claire noticed her hesitation and approached her with a warm smile. The woman explained that she had heard about Claire's journey and was inspired to apply for a job. She had been living in a shelter after escaping a difficult situation and wanted a fresh start. Claire saw herself in the young woman, the uncertainty, the quiet strength, and the desperate desire for an opportunity. Without hesitation, Claire offered her a position, remembering how one act of kindness from Shaq had changed everything for her. She knew the importance of paying it forward and providing others with a chance to rebuild. As the bakery continued to thrive, Claire also began dedicating time to mentoring others. She started hosting evening workshops in the shop, teaching baking skills to single parents, people experiencing homelessness, and anyone looking for a creative outlet. The workshops weren't just about baking, they became a space for storytelling, connection, and healing. Participants often shared their struggles and triumphs, finding solace in the shared experiences of others. One night, a middle-aged man named Luis, who had been attending the workshops, approached Claire after a session. He explained that he had once been a chef but lost everything due to addiction and a series of bad decisions. Now sober and trying to rebuild his life, he had been inspired by Claire's story and her determination. He thanked her for creating a space where he felt seen and valued again. Humbled, Claire realized the ripple effect her journey had created. It wasn't just about her anymore. It was about the community she had fostered and the lives she could touch. Every person who walked through her doors brought their own story, their own challenges, and their own potential for growth. She felt a deep responsibility to nurture that potential, just as Shaq had done for her. Meanwhile, Shaq had been quietly working on another surprise. He had connected with a nonprofit organization dedicated to combating homelessness and offered to fund a program in Claire's name. The program, called Second Rise, was designed to provide housing, job training, and resources for families in need. Shaq saw it as an extension of the work Claire was already doing and a way to amplify her impact. When he shared the news with Claire, she was speechless. The idea of a program bearing her name felt overwhelming but deeply meaningful. Shaq reassured her, explaining that it wasn't just about her, it was about creating a legacy of compassion and support. Together, they brainstormed ways to integrate the bakery into the program, offering internships and training opportunities for participants. As Second Rise took shape, the bakery became a beacon of hope. Local businesses and community members rallied behind the initiative, donating supplies, volunteering their time, and spreading the word. News outlets picked up the story, and soon Claire found herself at the center of a movement. It was both exhilarating and daunting, but she embraced the challenge, knowing it was an opportunity to make a difference. One particularly moving moment came when a single father named Aaron, who had been one of the first participants in Second Rise, shared his story during a bakery event. He spoke about how he had been living out of his car with his young son after losing his job and how the program had given him the tools and confidence to rebuild. He now had stable housing, a new job, and a renewed sense of purpose. "I never thought I'd be standing here today," Aaron said, his voice thick with emotion. "But people like Claire and Shaq showed me that even when you hit rock bottom, there's always a way up. You just need someone to believe in you." The audience erupted in applause, and Claire felt a lump in her throat. She glanced at Shaq, who gave her an encouraging nod. Moments like these reminded her why she had fought so hard to create something meaningful. It wasn't just about pastries or profit, it was about changing lives. As the night wound down, Claire found herself reflecting on the journey that had brought her to this point. From living in her car with Mia to running a successful bakery and launching a community program, it had been a whirlwind of challenges and triumphs. She thought about all of the people who had helped her along the way: Shaq, Tony, the retired pastry chef, her customers, and the countless others who had believed in her vision. She also thought about the lessons she had learned, the importance of resilience, the power of empathy, and the need for accountability and action. She had discovered that true leadership wasn't about doing it all alone. It was about uplifting others and creating spaces where everyone could thrive. As she closed up the bakery that night, Claire felt a deep sense of gratitude. Her story was far from over, and there was still so much she wanted to accomplish. But for now, she was content to take it one step at a time, knowing that each step brought her closer to the kind of world she wanted to help build. A world where kindness and opportunity could flourish, and where everyone, no matter their circumstances, had the chance to rise. The success of the bakery and the Second Rise program soon attracted attention from larger organizations and even local politicians. Claire was invited to speak at community events, panel discussions, and fundraising galas, where her story was celebrated as an example of perseverance and social responsibility. It was an exciting time, yet also overwhelming, as Claire struggled to balance her growing public profile with the day-to-day needs of the bakery and the program. In the midst of all the attention, Claire received a call from a woman named Valerie, who worked for a local foundation that provided grants to social entrepreneurs. Valerie explained that the foundation was interested in supporting Claire's work and offered her a sizable grant to help expand both the bakery and the Second Rise program. Initially hesitant, Claire was unsure how accepting the grant would affect her independence and her vision for the program. She wasn't eager to have too many strings attached, and the idea of being accountable to outside forces made her uneasy. However, after consulting with Shaq, who encouraged her to view the grant as an opportunity to create even more impact, Claire decided to accept. With the grant secured, Claire focused on expanding the bakery's footprint. She began looking for a larger location, one that could accommodate more customers, offer cooking classes, and provide job training for those in need. The process of finding the perfect space was lengthy and stressful, but Claire was determined to keep moving forward, fueled by the belief that she could make a difference for others. Shaq, ever supportive, helped Claire navigate the business side of things, including securing loans and negotiating leases. He was also instrumental in organizing a marketing campaign that would help spread the word about the bakery's expansion and the Second Rise program. Together, they hired a team of passionate individuals to help with the bakery's growing operations, while still maintaining the personal touch that had made the bakery so beloved in the first place. Meanwhile, the Second Rise program continued to flourish. More families and individuals enrolled, finding not only employment and housing but also a sense of community. One of the program's graduates, a young woman named Nadine, began working as a manager at the bakery, using the skills she had learned in the workshops to train others. She became a mentor to many, offering guidance and support to those going through similar challenges. Claire's role as a mentor had evolved as well. She no longer just shared her knowledge of baking, she now actively coached people through difficult situations, helping them navigate their own personal and professional challenges. She became a source of strength and wisdom for those who needed it most, offering them both the hard skills and the emotional resilience to thrive. Through her work with the bakery and the program, Claire saw firsthand how transformative mentorship could be. She often thought about the way Shaq had supported her when she needed it most, how his belief in her had given her the courage to take risks and face her fears. Now, Claire was paying it forward by mentoring others, teaching them not only how to bake but also how to be resilient, how to advocate for themselves, and how to find strength in their own voices. One evening, as Claire and Shaq sat in the newly expanded bakery, looking out at the bustling streets of the city, Claire reflected on how much had changed. The bakery was thriving, the program was growing, and her life had taken a turn she could never have predicted. But even as she enjoyed the fruits of her labor, she couldn't forget the struggles that had brought her to this point, the nights spent in her car, the times she felt invisible and lost, and the fear that she would never escape the cycle of poverty. It was in those moments of reflection that Claire realized how much she had grown. She had gone from feeling like a victim of circumstance to becoming a powerful force for change in her community. She had taken control of her destiny and used her own experiences to help others. The phone rang, pulling Claire from her thoughts. It was Tony, calling to check in. "Hey, Claire. Just wanted to see how everything's going with the new space. You excited?" Claire smiled, her mind already racing with possibilities. "Yeah, Tony. It's all coming together. We've got more space for workshops, more resources for the program, and more opportunity for everyone. Sounds like it's going to be amazing. You've come a long way, Claire." She paused, feeling a swell of gratitude. "I couldn't have done it without you, Tony. And without Shaq. You both gave me the support I needed to believe in myself." Tony chuckled. "I just helped you see what you were capable of. You did all the hard work." Claire nodded, a quiet sense of pride filling her chest. She had done the hard work, yes, but she knew that it had been the support of others, Tony, Shaq, the community, that had made all the difference. As she hung up the phone and turned to Shaq, who was flipping through some documents, Claire felt a deep sense of purpose. She had come a long way from the woman who once struggled to survive. Now she was a force for good, a leader in her own right, using her platform to create lasting change. But as her business expanded and her influence grew, Claire never lost sight of her original mission: to provide a better life for Mia and to offer hope to those who felt forgotten. She knew that, in the end, the most important thing wasn't the size of the bakery or the number of people she helped. It was the legacy she was building, one of resilience, compassion, and community. Her journey was far from over. There were still many people to help, many lives to touch, and many challenges to overcome. But as long as she had the strength to keep going, Claire knew she would continue to fight for a future where everyone, regardless of their circumstances, could rise to their fullest potential. The months following the expansion of the bakery and the establishment of the Second Rise program were marked by even greater transformation. Claire had built something that not only changed her life but was having a ripple effect on the community around her. Families were rising out of poverty, people were finding purpose and stability, and the bakery had become a cultural hub where people from all walks of life gathered to break bread and share stories. But it wasn't without its struggles. As the program expanded, so did the complexity of managing it. There were logistics to consider, more people to support, and growing expectations to meet. Claire found herself stretched thin, juggling multiple responsibilities, running the bakery, overseeing the program, and making time for her personal life, especially with Mia. Shaq, sensing Claire's exhaustion, offered to step in and help manage the day-to-day operations. His approach was practical, his presence a calming force in the midst of the whirlwind. While Claire had been focused on the human side of the program, Shaq took on the business side, managing finances, negotiating with suppliers, and streamlining operations. His expertise allowed Claire to focus on what she loved most: mentoring, baking, and connecting with people. One evening, as Claire was wrapping up a mentoring session with a woman named Karen, she received an unexpected phone call. It was Valerie from the foundation that had granted the initial funding for Second Rise. Valerie was calling to inform Claire that the foundation had been so impressed by the success of the program that they wanted to feature it in a nationwide campaign, highlighting Claire's work as a model for social entrepreneurship. The news was a double-edged sword. On one hand, the exposure would bring in more support, more funding, and more opportunities for growth. On the other hand, Claire had never sought fame or recognition. She had always focused on helping people quietly, behind the scenes. Now, it seemed like the world was about to take notice. Claire sat with the news for a few days, discussing it with Shaq, Tony, and the other key people in her life. While everyone was excited about the prospect of national recognition, Claire knew that the attention came with new pressures. She would be expected to be a spokesperson, to share her story with the media, and to be a representative of the change she was creating. She wasn't sure if she was ready for that kind of visibility. After much consideration, Claire decided to embrace the opportunity, not for herself, but for the people who depended on the program. She knew that the more attention they received, the more lives they could touch. It wasn't about her anymore. It was about creating a movement, a legacy of support and empowerment that could inspire others to take action. The campaign launched with much fanfare. Claire appeared in interviews, spoke at events, and shared her story with anyone who would listen. She spoke about resilience, about the power of second chances, and about the importance of community support. It wasn't easy. At times, the attention felt overwhelming, but Claire knew that it was a necessary part of her mission. One of the most powerful moments came during a televised interview with a popular talk show host. The host asked Claire what kept her going, even when things seemed impossible. Claire's response was simple but profound. "I've learned that the hardest moments in life can be the most transformative," she said. "When you're at your lowest, when you have nothing left, that's when you find your strength. That's when you learn who you really are. And if you can find your way out of that darkness, you can help others find their way too." The interview was widely shared, and Claire's words resonated with countless viewers. Messages poured in from people who had been inspired by her story, people who had faced their own struggles and were now motivated to take action, whether by joining the Second Rise program, donating to the bakery, or starting their own community initiatives. Claire had created something far bigger than she had ever imagined. What started as a small, personal mission to build a better life for her family had become a movement for social change. The bakery was no longer just a place for pastries. It was a beacon of hope for people who had been overlooked, underestimated, and forgotten. As the program grew, Claire continued to be involved in the lives of those who participated, often spending hours listening to their stories, offering advice, and connecting them with resources. It was a labor of love, but it was also a source of personal fulfillment. She saw herself in each person who came through the door. Each one had their own struggles, their own obstacles to overcome, but they also had their own potential. Claire's mission was to help them see that potential, to help them realize that they, too, could rise. As the program gained national recognition, Claire's focus remained on the community she had built. She worked to ensure that no one was left behind, that every person who entered the bakery or joined the program felt supported, valued, and heard. She worked to dismantle the stigma that often surrounded people in need, advocating for greater inclusion and equality in both the workplace and society at large. Shaq, who had become a constant presence in Claire's life and in the bakery's operations, continued to be a source of strength. Though his celebrity status had initially been a point of tension for Claire, she had come to realize that his involvement was instrumental in making the program a success. Shaq's star power drew attention, but it was his genuine commitment to the cause that made the real difference. One evening, as Claire looked out the window of the bakery, watching people from all walks of life interact, laugh, and share meals together, she felt a deep sense of fulfillment. This was what she had always dreamed of, a place where everyone, no matter their background or circumstance, could find belonging. It was a testament to what could happen when people worked together, supported one another, and believed in each other's potential. The journey wasn't over. There were still challenges to face, obstacles to overcome, and lives to touch. But Claire knew that she had built something lasting. She had created a legacy of resilience, hope, and love, a legacy that would continue to inspire and transform lives for years to come.